Just as we get started here, I have 40 minutes to teach you a little bit about brain science and why it's important, especially on your keto lifestyle and journey. But first of all, everything I'm going to share with you has been reviewed, scientifically researched, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. So this isn't about you believing anything that I'm saying here today. This has all been scientifically proven. And number one, my belief is, as we get started, that you can't outthink a bad diet. So you can't just think your way into being keto. I'm not saying that, so just so everybody understands that. Number two, I believe you have to move and breathe, and I'm going to explain all of that for you. And if you're in Mindy's talk earlier, they actually did a little precursor to what I'm going to talk about anyway, because we've both been working together. All three of us have been working together. So when we talk about the keto diet, first of all, we want to talk about how it works, because your diet actually is feeding the brain. And what we've been doing over years within the brain field, especially alternative brain health, is we've been putting people on the keto diet and also teaching them that the best thing you can do for your health is to eat less. My dad was 400 pounds. My mother was 350 pounds. When we got involved in doing what we're doing, we started in the 1970s. My dad, we actually grew up at the very first health food store in the world. It was in Battle Creek, Michigan. And so my mother went to an iodologist, and she found out that the kids shouldn't be eating sugar and dyes, which everybody knows today. But in the 70s, we were crazy. In fact, some of you might remember Ewell Gibbons. When I graduated high school, I was told that I would replace Ewell Gibbons in grape nuts commercials. So that's because it was a weird thing. You know, here we are in Michigan, not California, where you think this kind of thinking happened. But when you think about the keto diet in the brain, it just makes sense, because our brain needs ketones, right? It doesn't need the sugar. What's happening out there in the world, of course, is this overabundance of sugar, which if you're in the last lecture, I don't need to go into details on that. But the one thing most people don't understand, it's not what you're eating that's causing most of your problems. It's what's eating you. Your liver, as you saw in one of their slides, your liver stores 25 to 30 grams of sugar. When you have one stressful event, you've released all of that sugar into your system. I wrote an article, one of my best articles on the internet, millions of views, was how stress is more fattening than chocolate. Because your stress is causing a bigger problem than the food you're consuming. In fact, if you're obsessed about your food, it's probably worse, because now you're putting your sympathetic system on overdrive, and that's stopping your body's natural metabolism. There's actually studies with Virginia Hunt out of UCLA where they show that praying, even though it's a great thing to do, especially I'm Christian, so you want to pray before you eat. But the reality is that your body needs you to pray before you eat, so you prepare your body for digestion. If you're eating and you're stressed out or you're worried or you're concerned, you're actually taking your digestive system offline, and that's a brain function. 70% of your nervous system is between your ears, not in your limbs. So as we talk about these things, we heard it in the last talk as well, but I'm famous for taking ancient traditions and making modern technology. As we sit here today, 7 continents are doing research on brain tap. I just returned back from Brazil because we beat opioids in 3 different studies. You heard me right. Brain tap, your own brain, the most powerful pharmacy on earth, beat out opioids in 3 different studies. That's pretty significant. And Invisa, which is their FDA, actually approved it as a digital drug. No side effects. Worst thing that happens is you go to sleep and you get a good nap. So your brain is able to do these things. They mentioned Bruce Lipton. He's a good friend of mine. I'm the dean of brain-based medicine at Quantum University. We bring in people like Joe Dispenza and the other people out there because we believe that the science of quantum information, just like what you're doing with keto, really is the next phase of wellness, and that we can mathematically calculate what it's going to be. Now, you're measuring foods and figuring different things out, but the reality is that it's an equation. If you can track what you're doing, you measure the results, then you're going to find out if you're doing poorly or not. When you think about the number one thing that people are missing today, the number one prescription besides gratitude, which we learned in the last one, which I'm a big believer in, is light. Dr. Sunshine, we are, and by the time I'm done with this talk, hopefully you'll understand, there used to be a metaphysical concept that said we are all light. Well, science has proven that we are light. And by the time I'm done, I'm going to have you convinced, I guarantee you, because it's not your epigenetics that's controlling it. I mean, your thoughts aren't controlling that. It's light It's biophotic exchange at the cellular level. I'm going to show you that, and it starts with your brain because that's where all the mitochondria is pretty much. Most mitochondria in the body is in the brain. So when we think about that, now you can do cold plunges, you can challenge the body. I love it when people say they pray to God to get rid of their stress. That's probably the worst thing you can do. What you want to do is pray to God to give you the strength to handle your stress. You want to have the resilience, the strength. My wife has a t-shirt that says, God only gives you the amount of stress you can handle. God must think I'm a real badass. So you got to kind of take it that way. And so as you think about that, when we get out into nature, when you ground, inflammation is one of the biggest problems we have today. And I'm going to show you some slides today on what we see in the brain. What we see inflammation looks like in the brain is occupying a brainwave called delta. When we say brainwave entrainment, you are all being entrained here all the time, every day, everything about you, everything about your environment. In fact, they showed it there. You're actually 80% of who you are this very moment just changed every 40 seconds. Every 40 seconds, every DNA pair gets an opportunity to either show up as its best self or show up as its limited self. And that's dependent upon the food you consume, the thoughts you think, everything about you and everything around you is playing into that. So when you think about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, it's making you who you are. You're not the byproduct of mom and dad as much as you're the byproduct of your environment. When we think about our environments growing up over time, now most of you have a little bit of stress in your life, I'm sure. But this prehistoric guy, he would only have stress maybe 3 or 4 times during a week. We have that much stress before breakfast. The average person looks at their phone 300 times a day. And every time you look at your phone, you have a cortical response, a stress response. Because unfortunately, when they said those numbers, it's 80,000 thoughts a day, 60,000 are negative, and your first predictive thought is what you always have. Most people, 90% of the population, their first thought is no. Their first thought is, I don't believe it. Their first thought, it isn't possible. I'm telling you right now, that is the worst way to think, because we live in a world of infinite possibilities. Your first thought is yes. What opportunities do I have? How can we maximize this experience? What's going on right now that I can reframe this experience? Because whatever you're going through, whatever brought you to the keto journey, that's your incubator for your superpower. You're going through that so you can learn, develop, and hone your skills so you can improve the lives of people around you. Maybe it's just your immediate family. It could be some of you who get up on stage and tell your story. But it has to start with you and where it's coming from and how you handle stress. The problem is our nervous system. Right now, especially after 2020, most people's nervous system are on full bore, gas pedals to the floor, brakes on the floor. They don't know what to do. The nervous system's just going crazy. We can measure that, and I'm going to show you some slides today that actually show that. But you can go over and get a scan at our booth, and we can show you what your nervous system's doing. Because one thing is you can guess all day long, but if you test, you'll know. We wanted to have a test. How could we test somebody's nervous system? Well, we can use EEG. This is when we use brain caps, and you've seen those before. And we have those at our lab, and those are great. They take about 45 minutes. At a trade show, we can do it through ECG. We put clips on the body. We run a low-level current through the body, and we can measure even brain function from every other part of the body because you are vibrating and teeming with energy. And depending upon how your nervous system is either in sympathetic or parasympathetic or neurohormonal states, that tells us how your brain is regulating your body. And that's going to tell you your health equation. Because what makes your body move and breathe and do all of its things isn't exactly what you eat. It's what you think, and then that converts into what you eat. So thinking comes first, then food comes second. So you have to have the right thoughts and how to do that. Now, how do we do that? Your heart right now, every one of you in this room and every person that you see in the universe, their heart has 40,000 specialized cells. These are called neutrino cells. These neutrino cells actually think, they respond, they remember, and they act independent of our brain between our ears. And the most frightening thing that happened over 10 years ago was they realized that that's the brain that controls the whole show. You have a brain in your heart. It's very small, but it controls everything. It communicates twice as much to the rest of the body as the body does to it. That's why there's more heart attacks on Monday morning than any other day of the week. If your heart is not in what you're doing, you will not thrive. So part of what they know is there are certain frequencies from our heart. We can measure your heart rate from up to 18 feet away. You have a magnetic field around you. In fact, when we presented to the National Institute of Health, we were told that now they actually have in science, in the National Institute of Health, now this is the health part of it, not the drug part of it. There's two different divisions. I'm talking about the ones that are really in for our health and natural medicine. We have something called the biosphere. Medicine is now acknowledging that we are electrical and light beings. We are beings of energy and light. We are not just blood and guts and vomit, running around trying to live our lives until we die someday. We are energy. And hopefully you'll understand that. But now we can take what they did with our astronaut program and the Russian cosmonauts is when they put somebody up in space, they can't put an EEG, they can't put all the equipment up there, but what they can do is they can measure between the heart rates. There's something called the RR function. This isn't a math class, but I just wanted to show you where some of this knowledge is coming from and why science is taking us to the next level. Everything you do physiologically can be measured now. And it's not just about sleep, but sleep is key. Sleep is important, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. Unfortunately, this is what most people think meditation is about. And I still remember going to AIMS Bhopal, which is Bhopal, India. The AIMS Institute is the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences. There's no higher authority in meditation in the world. We have a lab there. BrainTap does. And they do a lot of research with us, especially on breath work and brain tap and other things that we do. And I remember Dr. Varun looking at me and he says, Patrick, you're actually cheating. Why? You're cheating because it takes 20 to 30 years for somebody to get these states of meditation. And I said, Varun, what do you mean I'm cheating? He goes, well, you just put this equipment on and people get into this meditative state and they get all the benefits. They don't have to do all the work. And I said, well, have you ever meditated to a candle, Varun? And he said, oh yeah, all the time. I said, did you know you're cheating? He said, what do you mean? I said, that candle happened to be the technology of the time. That candle flickers at 10 hertz frequency. 10 hertz happens to be alpha. 10 hertz also happens to be neutral for the brain. When you're looking at a candle, when you burn a candle and you just start to relax, there's a reason for that. There's a physiological response. It's called frequency following response. Every cell of your body has it. Now, in a negative way, that happens with EMF. Some people get bombarded by electronic smog and things like that, and it affects their body. Everybody gets affected, but 20% actually get put down. I mean, I know a guy that if you turn on a cell phone in his presence, he passes out because his body is that sensitive. But our body, our cells are always going out to our environment, measuring what the environment's about, and then mirroring that in our system. So if we're sitting by an ocean or by a lake, how many people like being by bodies of water, just relaxing? That's because that body of water has a resonant frequency of 10 hertz. If you and I were on a spaceship coming to Earth and we were to look at the Earth itself, the Earth would resonate between 0.05 and 100. The only other thing in the universe that we know of that does the same thing is our brain. Our brain has an evoked potential of 0.5 to 100. 100 being high gamma, 0.5 being delta, deep sleep, and all in between there. How many people watched when the tsunami hit that wiped out everybody on TV? You saw that on TV. What you didn't see was animals. There were no animals killed in the filming of that because all the animals left. They were in tune with the environment. They knew the tsunami was coming. The people were chasing the wave because they were so out of tune with what's going on our planet. We are in a symbiotic relationship with our planet. Even back to the first speakers today with the farmers. We have to be in a relationship with everything. There's no disconnect from anything that we're doing. So when we talk about meditation and what we need to do, meditation is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. If you are not doing something to downregulate your stress, I can tell you right now, your body is out of control. Because everyone is under stress right now. We don't know what to do. We can't even trust our government anymore. If I didn't know any better, I'd think they were trying to kill us. All these things that are going on. I mean, what do we do? People ask me all the time, is your product FDA cleared? I said, you mean the same government that brought us a vaccine? What do I care what they think? You know? So it's time for what we know is they don't approve anything that works. They actually wrote that down. If you look up in Medicare, they actually have a statement. They will not approve anything that works for Medicaid. Is that crazy or what? They write it right in their literature. So when we think about it, so what can happen when you start to tune up your brain? Well, I want to tell you about a story. One is a group down in Florida asked me, they said, what do you think would happen if we started putting people on dementia doing brain tap 3 times a day? And there's reason for 3 times a day. Number one, in the morning when you wake up, there's a brain wave called SMR. SMR means sensory motor rhythm. It has to do with your balance and your vestibular system. This is the brain wave as we get better looking and more intelligent starts to atrophy. So as you move through your life experience, this is the one that wears you out. We call it digital coffee because when you wake up in the morning, you should have cortisol, norepinephrine, all of these things. Your body naturally gives you this boost. You should not need coffee first thing in the morning, folks. If you do, you're just adding to the problem. Now, if you want to have coffee later in the day or you want to have it for just to have it, that's fine. But your body should regulate on its own first thing in the morning. If not, the brain is a very gifted instrument. What it does, it says, if you're going to do the work for me, I'm not going to do it for you. So it stops producing the norepinephrine, the cortisol, to wake you up. It knows you're going to go get the coffee to do that. So when you get up in the morning, that's why I recommend people do some kind of exercise. But in this study, what we did was we had them listen in the morning, this SMR training, it's about 10 minutes. We had them do a 20-minute session in the middle of the day. And by the way, have you ever found about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you get a drop in energy? Wherever you're at around the world, every person on earth gets a drop of 2 degrees at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is because our bodies were designed for the Serengeti, not for Austin, Texas. And we were designed to be taking a nap during that time because nobody does work in the Serengeti at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? You're sleeping there. Now, what we do, of course, is we go get more chocolate, we go get more sugar, we go get something to stimulate our system. But the reality is that what our body needs is energy. We live in an energy economy. So in the afternoon, we do a theta reboot, which means we've actually proven that 20 minutes of brain tap is equivalent to 4 hours of sleep. We've actually measured people when they wake up in the morning and after they do their afternoon session, and they have more energy in the afternoon than they did in the morning. This is the exact opposite of every other person on earth. Our body gets energy in the morning and diminishes over time so that we go to sleep at night. But there's something called sleep and wake control. What happens to most people? If you look to your right now, look at the person to your right, then look to your person to your left, because if it's not you, it's one of them that's sleeping through the night. Only 1/3 of Americans sleep on a regular basis through the night. This is a big problem because sleep is what regulates all the systems. Sleep is when you incubate those superpowers, like I said earlier. What we did in this study, after 6 weeks, we measured them. We did everything we needed to. Their doctors diagnosed them with dementia. After 6 weeks, guess what? 39% neuroplasticity. Now, what is neuroplasticity? It's your brain's capacity to work, which means we turned on their mitochondria. We turned on the way their body processes information. Now, after that 39% improvement, we sent them back to their doctor. Their doctor said, wow, if you were like this 6 weeks ago, I would have never diagnosed you. 100% of the people were taken off the diagnosis in 6 weeks by practicing brain tap 3 times a day. Did they keep doing it? You better believe it. A year later, almost every one of them has 7% greater improvement. Your brain will improve at any age, by the way. We've done studies with 100-year-old people. We do a lot of work with a group called the 100-Year Lifestyle. And we showed them that your brain can improve at any age. So don't think you're too old to do anything. Your brain can rebuild itself. So this is just one of the studies that we did. Another study we did, just to let you know, because when we're dealing with concussions, we put them on a ketogenic diet. Because we want the least amount of stress on the brain to process that information. And food at that level is information. So what we did is we took people in a study, this was in Michigan, in Gaylord, Michigan. We took half the people and we gave them brain tap at the end of their treatment. The others just left the treatment room. So they all got the medical treatment that's necessary. What happened 1 year later, the group that did brain tap were between 30 and 70% neurologically better 1 year later. Not during the study, 1 year later. So what I wanted to show you was, once your brain learns to do these things, it will keep doing it even if you don't keep doing brain tap. Because the brain just simply needs to learn to get back into balance. And you need to learn some techniques to do that, to downregulate your nervous system, to reboot your brain, to get your body and mind working together and to create health and vitality. Now, how does this do this? You heard him talk in the last lecture, if you were here, about epigenetics. You know, back in 2003, when they told us that they mapped the human genome, how many people remember that? They said, hey, we mapped the human genome. They didn't map the human genome. What they did was they mapped 1% of it. I don't know about you, but if I answered only 1% of the questions on a test, I didn't pass. You know, in 2018, by the way, they finally realized what all that junk DNA was for. They realized that every 40 seconds, all of that junk DNA gets rebraided. It was happening so fast, they couldn't keep up with it. You are changing at a rate of 40 seconds. Every 40 seconds, you are a different person showing up epigenetically. Meaning that whatever your last thought was, whatever your last food was, whatever your last beverage was, whoever you're hanging around with, all of that is playing in to who you are. So one of the things we recommend, especially for brain health, is who are you hanging out with? Are you hanging out with gainers? Are you hanging out with drainers? You know, we call these people energy vampires. You know, when they walk in the room, it gets a little darker. There are people like that. They rob you of your energy and your vitality. To really be yourself, we need to have an outcome-driven system that says, here's what we need to do. We need energy in the system. Your ketogenic diet gives you that energy. That's what the brain needs. So you're providing the brain what it needs to feed it, to get the cellular makeup going. When we talk about this epigenetic experience, how many people in here know who Tom Brady is? Okay. Tom Brady has some clothing. He calls it TB12. It's his special recovery wear. What he didn't tell you was that my science officer designed that for him. And he designed the clothing, and he holds the patent on it, because every person on earth emits 10 nanometer light. Everyone in this room is emitting light all day long. And what we discovered, Dr. Sadral primarily discovered, was that you could put ceramics in clothing and reflect that light back on yourself and heal yourself. Tom Brady doesn't tell you that. He just says, hey, I'm 44 years old. I'm a great athlete. Wear my clothing. But the reality is that and the reason I bring that up is the technology is so changing that we're starting to realize that not only the food you consume, but what you put on your body, the clothing you wear. Like these people out here with intelligent threads, we've tested that, and it actually does make a shift and a change in your physiology. I'm a big believer, if you can't test it and have a physiological response, it's not doing anything. So our light, your light, when you can either save that. So when you're meditating, what we know, and they did a study during 2020 actually, and they talked about the gratitude piece in the last talk. What they found out was those people who are in a state of gratitude, peace, and tranquility actually transmit 200 times more light than people who are in a state of fear, anxiety, and frustration. Now, when you think about our lifestyles, we probably all know somebody who is suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, something going on in their life. This didn't happen 40 years ago. We'd occasionally have somebody when they're 80, 90, maybe 100 years old, have something like that happen. This is a lifestyle issue that we have. It's not just one thing or another. It's a whole lifestyle program. When you think about our ancient traditions, has anybody here ever heard of an ancient tradition where they say, you know what, we keep all the wisdom of the tribe with our youngsters? That doesn't happen, right? They say they keep it with the elders. That must mean whatever their lifestyle was like, their brain stayed physically fit and sound until a ripe old age, usually until they died. Because there's no reason for your brain to stop functioning. So when you think about what's going on with brain fitness, I just want to share a couple other things, and I'm going to share some slides with you. When we think about when I went to the National Institute of Health, we finally, in 2020, during the pandemic year, we got to show them what was going on, because basically, we were bombarded when that happened because people were wanting solutions to their stress problems during the COVID thing. So we did a test pilot with the National Institute of Health, and we showed them that one session of brain tap, and for those of you that have already tried out the brain tap out there, you probably saw this. We had an average of about 39.8% improvement in neurological function within one session of brain tap. Now, one thing I can tell you about the nervous system, nothing is ever permanent with your nervous system. I can't tell you, hey, do this and you're like that forever. This is, again, a lifestyle. So what we do know, though, is if somebody goes over and does the brain tap this weekend and you see a 39.8% improvement in your score, if you do brain tap every day for the next 30 days, that's going to be your baseline, which means you've now improved the way that you function on a daily basis, just getting up in the morning. And what that also means is that they now have proven that the sooner you can start working on your brain health, the better it is. It's not good to wait till you have a problem. You know, when people are talking about, I'm 61 now, I want to have a great brain when I'm 75, 80 years old, because I have grandkids. I want to be around. I don't want them to have to take care of me. And it all starts with doing these little exercises that we're talking about. I'm going to give you some tips on how to do this without brain tap, just in case some people don't want to go over and try brain tap. But one of the things we know that we've included in brain tap is music. When you relax to the right type of music, which actually they did a study called the Mozart effect, which basically is 10-cycle music. It's classical music. When you play that music, they now know that you are just smarter. Your brain just works better. They've done this with schools. So if you're trying to learn keto or you're trying to learn anything, what I'm recommending you do is play this music in the background. Your brain will synchronize, it will harmonize, and your ability to have cognitive function will improve. This is because it feeds the hippocampus. Your hippocampus is that part of the brain that retrieves all your memories. And under stress, it what causes a problem with those memories. The more stress you're under, the less likely it is that your brain will function correctly. I want everybody to stand up for me for a minute. Everybody stand up. It's a really simple example I want to give you. As you're standing, I want you to balance on one foot and do a circle. And while you're doing that circle, I want you to write your name in the air. And once you've done that, once you've mastered that, go ahead and sit down. Okay. How many people found that when you were doing your circle, you forgot how to write your name? How many people found that while you were writing your name, your circle went analog, like this, right? Okay, so I just gave you an experience of stress, but it was fun stress, right? It wasn't as difficult as a life-changing decision or something like that. But this is what happens with the brain. Imagine the world if under the most critical situations on the planet, half the world's computing power shut down. Your brain just did that for you. And it does it repeatedly because you haven't trained your brain to stay active during those states. If you're right-brained, in other words, what happened to you was you forgot how to write your name. So if you were little Jimmy and you're studying the night before a test, and when you're there with mom and dad, you're acing it, and they go, you're going to do great tomorrow, Jimmy. And then you get into the testing situation, teacher walks in and says, this test is harder than ever, and little Jimmy gets stressed out. All of a sudden, they don't remember anything. It wasn't that they're not smart. Their brain was not trained. In my first book, Awaken the Genius, I have a series of those trainings where I teach kids how to keep their brain active because they're never taught how to actually work their brain. They're told what to think, but not how to think. There's a big difference now. We're in a real deficit for that in our communities out there. Now, if you're the type of person that found that you could write your name, but your name went analog, under arguments, for argument's sake, you might actually find that when you get angry and upset, you actually believe that you can talk louder and somehow they're going to hear you better. Because emotions take over. We get what we emotionally believe, not what we logically believe. So all of that plays into how the brain function works and how it works with your body. When you think about immunity right now, which is key right now, we have a thinking immune system. Your immune system can destroy, how many people know who Wim Hof is? The guy who does the breath work. If you don't know who he is, it'd be an interesting thing for you to go online and check him out on YouTube. They put poison in his system and he just breathes it out. Now, he's not Superman. He's not superhuman because he's training other people to do it. That must mean we all have that ability. That's because we all have a very vibrant, dynamic immune system. And one of the things we know for brain health is that if you look at your life as a series of challenges instead of a series of threats, your immune system works better. So I tell people all the time, if you're too happy, you have too much satisfaction in your life, just go ahead and watch CNN. You're going to find out that you have this immune dysfunction. Now, when I talked about what happens, this is Kansas City Sport, one of the professional soccer teams. We're in most every soccer program, also around the world, as well as professional sports. But in this team, what we did is we showed them if they did a brain tap after their session, which means after your workout, they actually got almost 20% more HRV than they would if they waited 4 hours. If you're a professional athlete, let's say you do a workout, 4 hours later, you should be back to your normal. We showed them in 20 minutes, they were better than they were in the morning before their workout. That's because most people don't realize the one thing that's missing in their brain health, even their physiology for their body is they don't have that ability to basically download all the stress. We need a way to get rid of the stress, to really have a time to just offload it. And if you don't have a way to do that, then that's where Brain Tap comes in. And we showed this even with, this is what we did with professional, these are athletes in Seminole College, which is one of our partners. It's a women's group. They do we actually went to them because they wanted to know, hey, can we help them with their program for golf? They had already won the national championship. Now, since they've been using Brain Tap, they've done it for 4 years in a row. What we wanted to show them was it's not all about golf, because these were athletes, elite athletes. We were able to improve their alpha, which is their ability to have cognition. Golf, but if you don't play golf is played in about 5 minutes, but takes 4.5 hours. Because the rest of the time you're just talking to yourself the whole time. So we were able to improve their alpha by 90%. They didn't think that was possible. But the thing that we're most proud of is that we were able to, this group, these girls are now the top in the college. They have the top GPA. So now we're doing a whole study right now with the rest of the college to show them, if we can show them how to relax every night, and especially at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we showed them that they can do 20 minutes at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They're going to be so much more smarter than anybody else. And the reason is because all that stress causes you to lose out on your activity, and your cognition is imploded in that. So I want to get to some other things because I'm getting short in time. I want to show you a few things. If you haven't been, how many people here flew here by a plane? Okay, so what I did is, this is me. This is before I left on one of the, so when my brain changes, typically I'm around 100% all the time because I'm doing, this is my job. But then my nervous system is attacked when I'm on the airplane. There's a lot of inflammation going on. You can see I went from 71 in stress all the way to 180, which you want to be 100%. When you look at what happens after one session of Brain Tap, what happens is I'm better than I was before. I bring my stress level down. So this is the kind of thing that we need to tell people, is that even if you're doing really well, there's probably something that's going on a day-to-day basis that's going to hit your nervous system, that's going to affect on you. So we can actually show what's going on in the brain. So that first one, the psycho-emotional state, that's 100%. That means that my hippocampus has 100% energy. But after I did that flight, when I actually flew from North Carolina to California, I went down to 40%. My brain went from 32% delta down to 29, but you can see most people we find, if you've been at our place over here at Brain Tap, you probably found that about 50% of your brain is in delta. That's a really big signal that shows you have a lot of inflammation. But after the session, what happened was I was able to bring it back. So we have to have ways to cover what happens to our stress and our experience. The top is our neurotransmitters. When you go through these different processes with BrainTap, when you go through the relaxation process, when you get through alpha, theta, and alpha, what's happening there is your brain is creating all of the neurotransmitters you need. And we can actually measure those. And you can see what happens just beyond that. For a 4-minute flight from North Carolina to California, it went from a Howard 100 down to 33 and went to 100. Our metabolic rate, my metabolic rate went from 259 down to 35 and went back to 589. Your nervous system controls your metabolism. So as you do these different things in the brain, and I just want to show you our brain, this is when I'm usually functioning, my body functions about 31 years old instead of 61 years old. After the plane ride, I was 53, but after the BrainTap session, I'm back to 31. So it's all about your thinking and how those things change you. And we can give you all of this information. Also, we can deliver it to you in this way. This is the way we do it for all of our different research and the numbers. But what we find is if you have the nice graphics to show people. So I'm going to encourage you to come over and get some time. They can schedule you time to see it. See what's going on with your experience right now. We'll see where you're at. We can see your nervous system before and after to see if we have a good benefit for you as far as how the brain transitions. We do know that most people don't take time to relax. If you're not doing some form of mindfulness, relaxation process, I'm going to encourage you to come over and try BrainTap, because when we do our studies in this, we've seen about 30,000 brain scans. We found there's only been about 5 people out of that whole group, when they meditated on their own, actually had a good positive response to their brain activity. They're actually stressing out their brain instead of de-stressing it. So I want to invite you over to see it, to see what we have. We also have, for those that maybe we won't be able to get into it because we can only see so many people over there, but if you sign up, they'll sign you up, they'll schedule a time for you to see it. But you can also go on to braintap.com and you can try a 14-day trial where you can try it on your own and start using it. In our sleep study we did in Australia, which was just published, we showed that these were coal miners that never saw the light of day. We were able to improve their sleep score by 70% in just 3 weeks. And if they just used our app, which you can access in 14 days for free, they had that same response in about 6 weeks. So I'm going to encourage you to look at more about brainwave entrainment, what's good for you. Get in with the keto is the best way, we believe. We feature it all the time when we're working with brain health. I want to thank you for letting me share with you tonight, and hopefully you come on over and visit us.